Hi everyone, my name is Jarek from Genius Gecko, and this is second video where we'll be talking about app used for project management, portfolio management called Structure. If you haven't seen our first video, check out our YouTube channel, and if you did, let's jump right in. In this video, we're gonna focus on resource planning. But while we'll be doing resource planning, we'll have to actually go into a bit more technical configuration of Structure, and we will see and discuss some other interesting, unique even, I think, features that are available in Structure. So, I've just enabled the resource panel, and let's check what we can see over here. Now, you may ask where these numbers are actually coming from. Where does capacity of a user comes from, and where does workload comes from? So it's pretty simple, at least when it comes to workload. So tasks are estimated. In this case, I am using original estimate, although we could use different field. We'll look into that later. And we have duration of a task. So basically, at the moment, this task, PPS81, is estimated for 1 day, planned for 1 day, so this will basically allocate 8 hours of work on me on that particular day. Lower we can see that Colin has 16 hours assigned. It's in red because he's basically over allocated. We can switch from hours to percentage, and we will see that he's basically twice as much work assigned as he should be able to do. While Mark is basically everywhere allocated nicely, 8 hours, I'm heavily over allocated. Okay, now let's try to reassign one of the tasks, the one that's maybe just estimated for 1 day. For example, for Tom. Tom at the moment has 8 hours of work planned for Monday. So we will change that, change the assignee to Tom, and we will see in a moment that numbers over here change exactly. So now the Tom is over allocated, I'm also still over allocated, but not as much as I was. So we know where the values comes from, but what if we're, for example, using story points for our estimate? Or maybe we would like to use remaining estimate as the value that we are using for our planning. This is actually possible. So if we'll go over here to configuration, we have several sections over here. So the one that is interesting for us at the moment is scheduling. And over here we can do some magic. So we can decide whether we want to use time tracking or not. Do we want to use remaining estimates only? So this will basically ignore original estimate. What is the default estimate? So basically, when we create a task, what is the estimate by default set? Of course, later we will be able to override that, but it is pretty helpful to have something, because when we load the tasks, all the tasks that do not have this value set, it will be harder to do the planning. If something is set, we already see something in our resources, it's a bit easier to understand. Now over here, use custom estimate. This is really interesting, because if this is selected, we can pick any other field that we want to use for our estimate. So for example, we could use story points, decide that this is format story points. We could of course go for hours, minutes, days, or whatever else. Also, if we pick story points, we can select the ratio. So basically, often when using story points in agile environments, we are not really interested in how many hours the story points will represent, because this is not story points are what story points are used for. We are doing the planning on more long-term, the sprint level, and we're interested only in how many story points we will deliver per sprint. But for the resource planning that we have in Structure, this is required. We are doing planning in a bit more waterfall way. We will be talking about agile planning later. But yeah, we can pick story points over here, and we can change several other things. We won't cover all of them now. I will stick to what we had before. But let's look at one other interesting things, at resources. The attribute. This attribute or this information defines based on what field our resources are defined. So at the moment it is assignee. It means that every person who will be assigned to our ticket, in our structure, will be treated as resources, but we can switch this. So let's, for example, switch this one to the other field that I have. This is single select drop down, BPSC team. So I will save that. And over here you can see the teams that I have assigned to this issue. And now you can see that as a list of resources, actually teams are listed, or the values from the team field. So you can see that you can do the planning from multiple different perspectives. You could have on one issue several different fields. For example, team and assignee are the most obvious one, where first you are doing the planning on the team level, later you are doing the planning on assignee level, a bit more precise, and you can switch between the two views in configuration. But there are also some less obvious ways to approach that. So for example, if your developer's team is requiring certain hardware to do the tests, and you have limited amount of that hardware, you can actually put this hardware into the single select dropdown and also use it for planning. So you will be selecting in this field the hardware that you're needing for the time, for the duration of the task. And you will be able to monitor over here whether this hardware is available or not. So I think this is really nice feature, the ability to switch between different resource field and see the resource planning from different perspectives. I don't think I have seen it in any other tool, project management tool in Atlassian environment so far. You may have noticed that despite the fact that I changed the resource field from single individual that is assignee to the team, or to the field that is meant to represent the team, over here the team is still over allocated when 16 hours of work is assigned to it. So doesn't look like a large team, right? And basically, at the moment, whenever I assign more than 8 hours of work per team, they will be over allocated. How to change that? Well, again, if we'll go back to configuration, to the resources, there is section to set default units. So this is basically multiplier telling how many full working days each resource will be able to perform. So let's switch that back to 2. Let's save it. And you will see that right away this 16 actually became gray because we are no longer over allocating the team. So this is the global change. This is the change of default values. Over here, we can click on specific team, go to the settings here, and actually change also the team value. So let's go to 10 for this particular team. And you will see that now everywhere I am in gray, because if I would be to over allocate this team, I would have to assign more than 80 hours of work. So we can have the default value, but we can also have team specific numbers that will allow us to use different teams just by having single value picked in a drop-down. All right, so we know how can we manipulate the capacity. There are also other ways. We won't go into too deep into them, but basically we can change calendars that define how many hours per day we are working and on what days. This is pretty standard for this tool, so I will skip that. What is interesting, and for that I will hide the resource module for now. Let's just stick to the to the Gantt part, is where the workload comes from. So we know that we can take it from one of the fields that we'll pick, whether it is original estimates or maybe some custom fields, maybe story points calculated to time. But what is interesting is the behavior and what can we do with these numbers, because basically when you are over allocating resource that we've seen over there lower, what can you do with that? Well, basically you could either reassign the task, or you could play around with it on a timeline, maybe move it to section where there is no so much work allocated to that resource. So let's have a look at options over here. So first, let's try to move this task over. We see this is estimated for 1 day. We will try to move. You will see that this is not possible. That's because at the moment, manual scheduling is not enabled. We'll enable this in a moment, but if this is not enabled, what can we do with this task, right? So basically, in that case, tasks are planned automatically. If we create a dependencies between the tasks, it will be moved, right? Because then structure knows that this task should start after this one ends. So if you want to have as much planning as possible, then automatically you can go for this automatic scheduling. Now, what will happen if we will make this task longer, right? So look over here, look at the original estimate, currently 1 day. We will expand it to last 2 days. You see that original estimate increased. So basically, there is a mode in which length of a task is always correlated with the estimate. When we are expanding the task, the estimate increases. When we are making it shorter, the estimate decreases. This is really important to know, because you could expect one of the two things while planning the task, right? This is one option, but the other option would be that you want to spread this 1 day of work over multiple days. So you need to be aware that in certain settings, structure will increase the original estimate instead of spreading it over multiple days. Okay, but what if that does not work for us? Let's go back into configuration and see what else we can configure over here. The section that is interesting for us now is, again, the scheduling. And over here we can enable checkbox allow manual scheduling. We will have to then pick the fields on issue level that will represent start date and end date of the task. So I had it pre-filled earlier. Let's save it and see what happens. So right away, tasks, they seem that they have disappeared, but that's not the case. I already had some values in these fields provided, right? So these tasks were planned and start end date of this task was set to the values that were available in these fields that I picked as a start end date. Now, what happens is if I make this task longer, please look at the original estimate, nothing. So basically in this mode, I am able to set how long tasks should last without changing original estimate or any other estimate that I'm using. And this estimate, this value is actually spread over all of the days in my resource module. So basically less work allocated for the resource per day. What is more, this manual scheduling allows us to move the tasks around. So you can see over here, I make it so that the two tasks overlap, and structure does not enforce this, this dependency now. Although I am informed that something is not right with this task, if I click on it, you will see that there is potential scheduling conflict. This task may need to be delayed. And I clicked resolve, so it resolved itself. Pretty simple. So you can see that there are few ways you can do the planning, and yeah, depending on your needs, depending on your organization, how it's working, one or the other will usually be more useful for you. Here I haven't seen situations where people are switching between the two, but I can imagine this happening. Okay, so the last thing we're gonna talk about this video is our slices. So in the configuration you can create new slice and basically do some magic over here. So what slice does? What slice does, it allows you to select issues that are within your structure and create a bit different configuration for these issues. So yeah, we can pick them either by issue type. So we could say that, for example, all subtasks will have a bit different configuration, but we could also pick JQL and say that, for example, all issues from project something, let's see what we have here, apps layer, for example, will have different configuration. And over here we can add sections, and based on these sections we will decide which parts of the configuration are different. So basically we could pick, for example, original estimate, the work estimates. So if you have a case where into your structure you are pulling tasks from multiple projects, for example, because this query obviously could be more advanced and more elaborate. But if we are picking issues from multiple projects, part of these issues or issues in one project could have original estimates, because this is how the people in this project are estimating tasks, while the other project could have only story points. And it could be kind of a problem when you will be doing the resource planning. But over here we can say that, for example, issues from this project are actually using story points with certain ratio, and then structure will understand that based on from which project the issue is coming from, values for estimates should be taken from different fields, right? So this is really powerful. You can create multiple slices like that and change a lot of things over here. So whether all the issues with your structure need to have manual scheduling or part of them will be automatic, you can create slices with manual scheduling over here. Dependencies might be represented as different link types. We didn't talk about that, but obviously you can create links between issues showing dependencies in different projects using different link types. So here we can also define what kind of issues are linked with what kind of link types. Resource assignment, different fields using as a resource, and so on and so on. So this is really powerful feature of structure. It's a bit more advanced, because obviously what if you will create multiple slices with JQLs that are overlapping? It might have a bit unexpected behavior. Well, this is well defined here, but this is something that yeah, you may expect something else that you'll get in the end for very complex setups. Although still, I think this is a great feature. It gives a lot of flexibility and a lot of possibilities of addressing your legacy setups, your legacy configuration in a project that is basically working for years, for example. You do not want to change it, but you still want to use structure to have this overview and do the planning here. All right, that's it for this video. I hope you like it. Obviously, we are just scratching the surface of the tool, but I hope that this overview gave you some insight on how the resource planning can look over here. In our next video, we're gonna cover more agile-oriented approach for planning, for resource management. And we will be also looking at additional app from the structure family, so the structure cross-team PI Planner. Hope you enjoyed it and hear you next time. We're working with Structure and other project management tools in Jira every day. If you want to learn more about this tool, reach out to us and we will schedule a free session. We provide consulting, trainings and implementation services for Structure. Throughout the years, we've developed a process that guarantees a success and adoption of new tool.